Good morning, friends and neighbors. Today I've got a special treat for all of us. This is a fly I've been working on for the last couple years. And I shouldn't say I've been working on it, I've been hoarding it to myself. It came about relatively quickly once I figured out to stop trying to make the dang thing so complicated. And what we have here is called a lil bit. Obviously a take on my 2-bit, but this is a little tiny version, almost with a hint of jujubatus to it. Gosh, that's two pretty good flies mixed together. You can see if you look real close right there, there's 2 tungsten beads in there. And this fly is sort of tied, unlike, not completely like either one, but maybe a few little hints from either of those 2 patterns. And it's super simple to tie, so you're going to like that. The cool thing about this is I can tie this little heavy weighted fly down to a 22 very simply. This is a much easier tie than a jujubatus, I will say that. Jujubatus still obviously has its place. This is just a heavier weighted version. I oftentimes will fish this and a jujubatus together. But I've been fishing this fly, like I say, for the last couple seasons, and yeah, it works. It catches fish. That's all you really need to know. So, to get started with this, I'm going to pull this one out, and I'll put another hook in the vise here. Alright, so what I've got there is a Tiemco 2488, and in this case, for clarity on the camera, I'm tying a size 18. I've got 2 1.5 millimeter tungsten beads on there, and again, in this case, I'm tying a brown one, so these are both brown beads. And what I'm going to use for the tying thread and body and thorax and everything on this fly is Veevus body quill. And this stuff comes in a ton of different colors. It's a sort of a flat mylar ribbon. It's got a piece of single strand, not sure what it is, nylon monofilament, something like that, wrapped around it. So you can see there's a little crinkle to it if I hold that just steady there. And this stuff is actually, I just run it through a bobbin. You know, it's just threaded through my bobbin. You may need to use a threader to get it through there, but it runs through and it works just fine. You'll see here as I start to tie with it, it'll start to give you some ideas of things that you can use this for. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to start this just behind this second bead, just like I would my thread. You're just going to treat this just like thread the whole time. And you see if I separate that out, you can separate that tag. There's 2 strands of that other filament and 1 strand of that flat mylar. So I'll cut that tag off, and then I'm going to wrap back to the bend, and I'm just going to try to keep a nice flat, smooth surface there as I work back. Now, as you see that on the hook, that gives you some ideas of all kinds of stuff you can do with this. No thread necessary, and I've already done it, so there's more stuff coming with this material. So for the tail, what I'm going to use, and if you know me, you know that I like to use these. This is Coq de Leon hen saddle feather. This is just a mottled brown one. And what I want to look for here on a feather, let me pull all this fluff off the bottom, but what I want to look for is see the tips of, I mean, that's a great example, and it's actually showing very well. See how the tips of this feather are abruptly tapered, kind of short, sharp tips. I don't want wispy tips. When we're just going to use, you know, half a shank length worth of an 18 or 20 or 22, if you've got wispy tips, by the time you're just using the very tips, there's hardly any material there. So I want something with a little bit thicker tip. And what I'll do here is I'm going to pull off 8 or 10 fibers. See if we can actually count those. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, let's say 6 to 8 fibers. Depends on how thick they are, I guess. But I want to pull those out at a right angle so that their tips square up. And then I'll peel that off the feather. Save that feather, we're going to use it again. And then I'm going to tie this in at the bend. And as I've got it locked in there with just a single turn, I can kind of shorten it down, like I say, to about a half a shank long. And you want it right on top of the hook. So about like so. Then I'm going to just wrap forward over that with the body quill, right up close to the back of that bead, and then I'll trim it off just short of the bead so I can cover the stub ends. Now, on a size 18, We've got a little room for building a taper. When you get down on a 22, you don't need much work here to build this taper. We build most of the taper with the resin that we'll apply later. But in this case, I'm going to build a bit of a taper. And you can manage the twist in this as you wrap. It's very obvious that it gets some twist in it. You can sort of flatten it out. Although with a reasonable number of turns, there's not a whole lot of work to be done. So I'm just going to build a bit of a taper there. And then I'm going to try to do this where you can see it. I'm going to pull that bead back and jump my thread in between the two beads. And at that point, I'm going to build up the arbor of the hook in between those two beads. I don't want that narrow space, so you can see I've started to fill that space in. And this is where I'll put the legs in. So we'll come back to that same hen feather, and I'm going to take about twice as many fibers as I used for the tail, so in theory that ought to be about 12. Like so. And I'll be honest with you, I don't count those fibers. I can actually see them on my screen here very well. I could count them there. I don't count them. I just sort of measure across. That's we used about an 1/8 of an inch long section for the tail. I'll use about a 1/4 of an inch long section for the legs. And I'm going to divide that in half. You can see I just used my scissors tips to divide that clump in half. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this clump and I'm going to hold it close to those tips. I'm going to measure those tips back to about the point on the barb. And then I'll pinch them in place. And I'm going to come over the top and catch those with a couple turns. Now those went in pretty straight. They don't always go in straight. Sometimes they'll twist around. Sometimes you'll get a little torque. And that is exactly why I use the CDL hen feathers for this. I'm going to divide those butt ends. And I could sort of tweak these butt ends to position those legs or shorten them or maneuver them around wherever I might need to. Those are pretty square. Like so. Let's get that turned so you can see it. So short little legs on either side. Now, one thing that I found doing this fly is if you try to trim these butt ends now, you'll end up with little stubs that stick out and sort of mess up your resin. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to pull the butt ends back on the far side and catch them backwards. And then with the same turn, I'll catch the near side. So I've just folded those butt ends back. And that'll allow us to sort of hide those little clipped stubs under our resin. And then I whip finish that right between those two beads. Just a couple turns, doesn't take many. Now I'm going to pull these butt ends forward. I'm going to come in with the tips of my scissors and trim those off as close as I can get. Alright, so that's what we've got right now. It's just legs and a tail and a body. Alright, so now I'm going to show you the cool part. I'm going to come in with a coat of medium Solarez resin. And it just takes a little drop. Not going to take much. And what I'll do here is I'm going to try to do this and keep my fingers out of the way here, but I usually sweep these legs down. My fingers are going to be in the way when I do that. So usually I would sweep these down and apply the resin, but you're not going to be able to see what I'm doing. So I'm just going to very delicately go in here and set this drop of resin down from the back edge of the front bead. And you can see I kind of bounce the needle. This is just like a jujubatus. Use the tip of the needle to just sort of direct this. You want the top half of the fly coated in resin. Like so. Once I get that general shape there, I'll come in and I'll hit that with my UV lamp. Cook that up nice and good. So that gave us a little darker shade on top, a little lighter shade on bottom. But we don't have a wing case. And I've fished these just like this. Doesn't seem to make a huge difference whether it's got the wing case or not. But the easiest way to add the wing case is to come in with a black marker. Now this is a Copic marker. It's got this fine watercolor tip. Works great on little flies. But all I'm going to do is color in a little oval here. For the wing case. Finish that edge off. And then I'll pick up my needle, and it's still got a little bit of resin on it. And I'm going to put a coat of resin over the top. If you don't coat over the top of that marker, it will rub off. So I'm going to put just that last little drop on there and sort of swell that wing case up a bit. You can sort of play with your taper a bit if need be. You see how big that lump of resin looked right there? I can't see that with my bare eye, but I can see it on the screen. So I'm going to finish that off, and then again hit that with the lamp. And that is our finished little bit. Super simple, super realistic, super heavy, super small. What more could you want? I'm going to flare these legs out a little bit more. I kind of pinched them back there. I'm going to put just that random bit of fluff in there. We'll get that out. There we go. So pretty good little tiny mayfly silhouette, but 2 tungsten beads, so nice and heavy, nice and small. And this stuff, this Veevus body quill, comes in a ton of different colors. This fly is, I've tied it in every one of the colors that Veevus body quill comes in. Olive, light olive, black, claret, purple, gold, yellow. I've done them with lighter colors, so tie it with a lighter colored body quill and then color the top of the abdomen with a marker, so you can get a 3-toned fly all said and done. Lots of variety to it. Super simple, super easy, and that fly catches fish. There I go again, you know, just when I think I can't come up with anything else that's super cool, here we are. You're welcome. Thanks for watching, guys. I'm Charlie Craven. Have a good day.